Hey everyone, sorry we are a few minutes late. Technology is not our friend today, but we are here.
It is not.
And this is part three of our three-part series of Get Launched. And today we're going to be talking about all the moving pieces of a launch because there are literally so many things that you need to keep on top of. And I'm Elisa Boogaerts, and this is Kimberly Weitkamp, and we're going to be discussing this, all the moving pieces, how to keep on top of all of them and get everything done in time. And we actually spent this is number three of a three-part series. And last week we spoke about the messaging that's super important for your launch and how it can kill your launch and kind of how to do it the right way. And before that, the week before that, we talked about overwhelm and how to really deal with the overwhelm because again, like there's so many pieces and that can be overwhelming and there's so much messaging to do and that can be overwhelming. So they all kind of connect together. So let me just introduce myself. If we don't know me, I'm Elisa Boogaerts, and I'm a launch strategist and planner. And I help coaches launch their programs and their events, and I help them do it with ease so they can really focus on scaling their business because that's usually what we start doing, right? We spend the first year or so of our business kind of doing one-on-one, and then we want to start scaling. We want to start doing events, summits, giveaways, group programs. And I help them go from feeling really overwhelmed of that sort of transition with so much to do and even being lost of where to start to being really structured and focused and organized. And I do this through my launch roadmap. And it's meaning basically I help you figure out everything that you need to do for your launch and when it all needs to get done. Do you want to introduce yourself, Kimberly?
Awesome, fantastic. Yes, and hi everyone. I'm Kimberly Whitecamp. Again, apologies. Technology has been fritzing out, so hopefully it stays today for the next few minutes, so that we can, put together this really fantastic section of part three of, as we talked about, all about launches, because there's so many moving pieces, and that's kind of what we want to talk about today. But I'm Kimberly Whitecamp. I'm owner of the Audience Converter, and I am a marketing and messaging strategist. I work with coaches to craft their messaging that attracts the right people at the right time. Most importantly, of course, is those people you really want to work with, who you love working with. Super excited to chat today about how launches kind of tie into that. I've been doing this for over a decade now, and have done my fair share of launching and helping with the messaging piece, right? Because now more than ever, it's super important to be yourself, to show up as you, but also to be able to stand out with messaging that really resonates. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So,
Yeah.
Elisa, though, as you are the launch strategist and the planner, your superpower is making sure everything gets done on time. That is not my superpower. That's why we're working together. And she definitely keeps me on track as well. So, how do you tackle, right, all of the moving pieces? Talk to us a little bit about, like, you mentioned a launch roadmap. Moving pieces. Let's hear it. What do we need to keep in mind for launching?
Yeah. So, if you didn't listen, kind of like the earlier ones, I'm like a super organized planner person, and I was a project manager in corporate. I've been project managing for about 14 years, and so with myself, I put together some amazing plans for my launches, and obviously launched my own programs and giveaways and summits and all the things, and totally detailed planned all of them. And I really use these plans, and I give them to my clients and really help them, keep on top of everything, all of these moving pieces. I help them navigate all those moving pieces in a launch and really take them step by step through that whole process, which can usually take about 3 months. And and I've seen it with many coaches where, we know what we need to do. So many of us, I find, and I am one of these 100%, and I just can't seem to help myself, is in a forever learner, right? Always learning, always absorbing, always going into the next program. Um, so we often know what we need to do, but we don't necessarily know how to like execute on it or give ourselves the time to execute on these things and to actually put all of that stuff that we know we need to do into a plan. And if they did come up with a plan, I find that some coaches that I've worked with, they maybe have done it too high level, which meant that they didn't have a full grasp of all of those moving pieces. So you need to really have a detailed plan So you know what exactly you need to do when. And I love having a checklist of things to do, being like, okay, these are the exact tasks. And I like to really break them down. And it's just like, if you think about it with your clients, it's kind of how you take them through your program, right? It's step by step, week by week, that 1% in the right direction, right? We always talk about, say even with habit change, creating these little baby steps, exactly. And that's because that will create this ripple effect, right? And that'll change your trajectory. So that's really what a launch plan is. And yeah, like I said, literally you can make a checklist and get as detailed as you like. And we really need to be aware because we have all of these moving pieces. And sometimes you might think, okay, I got this one thing in my plan, but that in itself could have like 20 different tasks in it, right? And you may not have thought about it. So, for example, if you're launching a new program and so you want to put on a webinar, right? And you want to promote it. Well, you're going to need a landing page for your ideal clients to sign up to that webinar, right? So when you think about that webinar, like, okay, what are the tasks that need to happen? Right? You need to have a landing page. You need to have your copy for your page. You need to have good graphics. So you need to create those. How do you want your page to be structured? What platform are you going to use? Does it connect to your CRM system or your mailing system? Do you need to set up affiliate links? Is it mobile responsive? Does it look good on mobile? Do you need a tag to trigger your automation? Does your CRM like know what the automation and what will that email say when you do set up the automation? Is it gonna you do need to have Zoom, when will it be? What's the date? What's the time? Like thank you page. So we want to have videos and all these things. So if everything I just kind of said, you were like, nah. Oh my gosh.
Frustrating, right?
Talk about all the moving pieces. It's a lot of stuff to do, even if you're using AI to help you out with things, there's still a ton of stuff to do. So this one line in your plan, like poof, right? Like an entire week can be gone to try and get all that stuff put together. You may think like, oh, that'll just take me today. I'll just throw up a landing page. Like maybe not so much. So, but take a deep breath because it is doable. Everything is figure outable. And so what I like to say when we talk about all these moving pieces is try to think them through. And of course, you're not going to know everything if you haven't done it before. But really be realistic with how long something's going to take, right? Like I was just suggesting, like if you don't know all the tasks, like just kind of give yourself some time for wiggle room and really be nice to yourself and give yourself the time that you need. Because I can really guarantee you there's so much more that needs to be done. And, what if tech goes wrong? Like, for example, I've been having issues with my Zoom and that has been impacting all of my everything. And so, like, all of a sudden I have to like find this time to sort out my Zoom, just that you just never know what curveballs could come at you. So, and we don't know what we don't know as well. With Kimberly and I, we've been doing this for a long time, so we know a lot of the things, which is kind of good for you. That's why you kind of usually when we need help with someone to help us with all these things. So, yeah. So just plan out your lunch, start early, and really give yourself enough time and a little bit of wiggle room for all of that unexpected things that may or may not happen.
Yes, I cannot emphasize enough wiggle room, right? Wiggle room is fantastic. And it gives you peace of mind as well, because if you don't need wiggle room, then guess what? You just regain some time. But if you do need it, then um, you're not scrambling at the last minute to be like, how am I actually gonna do this piece of it? So Elisa talked about the planning side of all of the moving pieces, right? You need to have a plan, you need to have a structure, you need to know what you're doing and when you're going to do it, and make sure it's actually in your calendar. And a good piece of what you'll be doing is your messaging, right? It's all of the pieces you have to create. So, most people, when they think of a launch, they're like, oh, I need a sales page. They remember that piece, right? I need a sales page. I need something that's up and there that shows people what it is I'm selling, right? But beyond that, what else do you need, right? And one of the things I find a lot of people forget about is you got to tell people and you got to remind people. And if you're running some sort of event to fill the event, right? Like if you're running a webinar or a workshop, you need to promote that and you need to remind people about it. And there's all of these moving pieces when it comes to the messaging as well, but you want it all to align, right? You don't want it to be willy-nilly. You don't want it to be last minute. Oh, I'm supposed to promote this thing. I guess I should go whip out an email about it real fast, right? Instead, you want it to kind of all connect. So that's why having somebody like Elisa in your back pocket is amazing, because she'll help you plan all those pieces out, right? Like, what all do I need to create? And then that's where I would come in as well with the messaging to make it all align. So there's something in copy. For those of you who don't know, copy just means the words that inspire your audience to take action. So in the world of copy, there's something called the golden thread, and it's what connects all of the moving pieces together. So when we talk about your messaging, reminder, what are you doing this launch for? Why are you undertaking this huge task, right, to get your launch up and running? And the reason you're doing it is to fill a program, right? So you start with the end in mind. That's one of the things we talked about to overcome overwhelm in our first part of the series. And again, if you missed it, don't worry. It's living on LinkedIn as a live. So go find the video and be able to watch that section of it. But with the golden thread, that means your messaging needs to all connect. And not only does it need to connect, it needs to eventually bring people to the end point. The end point is saying yes to your program. So when we're talking about social posts to promote your webinar, for example, or when we're talking about reminder emails to tell people why they want to show up, you want to think about why they want to take that next step and how does that ultimately lead them to that final step of saying yes to the program, right? So you start with the program. Okay, what do they need to know about the solution you're providing? What do they need to know about the challenge you're solving? All of those pieces you want to thread throughout all of the messaging that you put in. So when we talk about moving pieces, it's not just logistics, it's not just technology, but it's also making sure that all of your messaging lines up as well. So, quick example here, right? If you're going to sell something, what do they need to do right before saying yes to selling it? Well, they need to have that link. Okay. Right before that, what do they need to know? Right before that, what do they need to know? If you're going to have a webinar or a training that promotes this program, it's not about what about the program is so great. It's about why should they attend the webinar? That's the messaging. But that messaging should be aligned with your program, right? So there's all of these pieces that you want to have a consistent messaging and golden thread throughout, because you're still talking to the same people and you're guiding them through a customer journey essentially. A little bit of a ramble, right? But anything to add for that moving pieces section, Elisa, when we talk about why everything needs to connect?
Well, I think that's what you were just saying is that customer journey, and so that's also part of the planning. It's like, okay, well, and sometimes we like both Kimberly and I really recommend that if you're going to be launching, you want to give it a good 3 months because there is so many moving pieces, and that journey lasts the entire 3 months. So there's like you want to be bringing people into your world, and you want to be nurturing them to gain that know, like, and trust, and then eventually start inviting them into something, right? Like an event and then eventually inviting them into your program. And you want all of that to be connected. So it's not like, you're say if you are nurturing and you're talking about one subject, but your webinar, your program is about a different subject, so like, because you could have like a breadth of things that you offer, you want to be talking about the same thing basically for the entire 3 months or even longer, or basically maybe the only thing that you ever talk about really, and all the different aspects of it. You want to make sure that that really connects because you don't want to surprise people, right? All of a sudden they're just like, what? Like, oh, she's trying to sell me something and it doesn't make sense. I didn't think she did that. I thought she did these other things. So yeah, it's really important to keep that all aligned. And like Kimberly was saying, there are literally so many things. I think Kimberly, didn't you say once that for a typical launch, if you were to write out all the copy in one document, it's like 37 pages or something ridiculous?
Oh, that's an understatement. So, the last big launch I wrote, which it had an event to fill the program. It had the program stuff itself. It had pre-event stuff to fill. It had stuff to send out to partners. All of the pieces that most people think of when it comes to a launch. And 30 pages, I wish. No, it was like 250 pages. of coffee all lined up together. Um, so, that's something to think about, right? Even if you don't do a super complex launch, right? Even if it's simply you make the announcements, you tell people about it in email, and then you close the cart. That's a lot, right? The most recent launch I was writing, um, the emails alone were like 25 pages. And that didn't include like the sales page, and it didn't include the program page. And I mean, that's just one segment of all of the pieces that you needed. So
Yeah.
when we talk about the moving pieces, there's a lot of them. But I don't want you to get intimidated by it because it's manageable, especially if you have a plan, especially if you give yourself enough time. I feel one of the
Mhm.
reasons why people fall into overwhelm, which is what we talked about in our first one, is they don't do their research, which ties into the messaging that kills your launch, right? So they don't do the research and they don't give themselves enough time and they don't make so, when you're doing a launch, that's your big push for that period of time in your business, right? So you can't do it in 10 minutes. That's not a thing that can happen. You need to give yourself some dedicated time. And it might be 2 hours a week. And over 3 months, that might be enough time, or a little bit more, a little bit less. But if you expect to be able to put all the pieces out there for a launch in 5 to 10 minute increments a day, it's a very different thing than like maintaining your social media, right? It's a huge, big piece. And frankly, if I can only think about something for 10 minutes a day, it better not take very long and it better not have a lot of thought required, right? Because it's a huge thing, right? Like writing a sales page is not a 10-minute at a time thing.
Mm-mm. Yeah, and even if at least for me, if I have 10 minutes, it needs to be one task that I can do easily, but if I were to be thinking about that, "Okay, I'm gonna write an email in this 10-minute slot," like, I would need to think, "Okay, where in the process, like, which email is this that's going out? Where in, like, in my whole thread process of messaging am I doing this?" I would probably take me 10 minutes just to orient myself as to where I was and the last email that I sent and what, like, yeah, it is you need to dedicate some time, fit it into your schedule, and you really need that focus time because there is a lot, especially with the messaging, because you really wanna connect with your audience. You want to convey things in the right way. And there's so many different types of messages and way that you can speak and connect to people. Because some people will resonate with some emails, sometimes emails, and some people will resonate with other ones. Some people have FOMO and some people don't have FOMO. So if you do like a fear of missing out email, some people might be like, yeah, whatever. And other people will be like, oh no, I don't want to miss out. I'm going to sign up right now. So yeah, there's so many different types of things that you can do, and you really need to give yourself the time to think about it and write it and then schedule it in and actually get it out there. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing to keep in mind as well, if we're talking about like emails, for example, right? So many people are like, "Oh, I'm worried. I don't want to send too many. How many is too many? What are the moving pieces that fall into that?" And the thing to remember is a great open rate nowadays is 30%. So that means 2/3 of your list didn't see the email, didn't open the email. So that's another piece is, when we talk about the moving pieces, it's like, what do you need to mention in that email that you need to make sure is in another one later on in the sequence? That messaging needs to align as well because they may not have seen every piece,
Right.
right? They may not have seen that social post, but they saw a different one. They may not have seen that email, but they saw a different one. They may not have seen the segment about the event you're doing, but then you're sending reminders to show up. Like, there's so many pieces. And you want it all to have that golden thread and you want it all to really map the journey, right? As Elisa was talking about, is that client journey, that customer journey, that is what your launch is. You're guiding them through that process. So you definitely want to give it some really deep thought because you want great clients out of
Yeah. Yeah. And it's almost like you start working with them before they join in kind of a way through your messaging. Um, oh,
it
I
for
had a
sure.
thought and then it's left my brain. Anyway, it'll come back to me at some point. Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah. So, I mean, what is that one step someone can take right now to make sure they can tackle the moving pieces? What do you feel, Lisa?
Um, good one. What is one step? I would think maybe like what you were just talking about. Think about that customer journey and think about, yeah, what that is that you want to take them on, sort of from start to finish. That can be and in an authentic way that is meaningful to you. Because I think that's the other things that we need to really write copy that's authentic to us and speaks to our people, but also is our voice. Like we talk about AI, and AI can be great, but you really want it to be your voice. And so, yeah. So think about that customer journey and the path that you want to take your people on to get them to yeah, work with you.
Absolutely. And I would say the one step to take right now, I love it. You said the messaging piece, and I'm going to say the other piece, which is put it in your calendar.
Yeah.
So with all the moving pieces, go ahead and list out all the pieces you think you need, and then come back a day later, read the list, and add whatever you missed. Because there's probably something you missed, right? But I would say map out all the pieces you're going to need and then put it into your calendar so you have the time to do it, right? I mean, that's the big piece is
Yeah.
we don't what's not on I live on my calendar, right? Especially when it comes to business. So it's like if it's not on my calendar, it's not happening. So the same thing is going to happen with your lunch. If your lunch isn't in your calendar, it's not happening.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. You absolutely need to dedicate the time. And like we said earlier, with that estimation of time, know that it's gonna take some time. Like even for me on the weekend for lunch that's coming up, I was like, okay, I'm gonna schedule in all my emails. And it took actually a while because there was like 12 emails I had to, it was all written up, but they still had to go in. They had to be timed. They had to be like, who am I going to? Am I going to my segment? Blah, blah, blah. And it took hours when you're like, oh, I can just schedule something. It can take some hours. So give yourself the time.
Give yourself the time. Awesome. So I guess, folks, if you missed the first two segments, they are under the launch series. The past videos and links are on both mine and Elisa's profiles on LinkedIn. They should be. And yeah, if you've got questions, do post them. And let's make an invitation, actually. So if you have questions about launching, if you're not sure, if you're like, wow, this seems like a lot, I have a couple of questions I want to ask beforehand, we want to answer them for you. So we are hosting an Ask Me Anything, all things launches event on November 27th. November 27th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. I think I got those times right. The
Yeah.
information, of course, will be added to this replay. And come and register. Come join us. Bring your launch questions. We want to help you tackle them. We're going to stick around for quite some time, answer questions as they come in. Anything about launching, right? So if you've got plans to get launched in 2025, come and ask your questions so that you can do it with a plan and do it with a process and get those burning questions answered before you do it. So again, come and join us in the Ask Me Anything on November 27th. Any
Yes,
final words,
exactly.
Elisa?
Yeah, like and these questions can be anything, like what to like even like what tech to use, what strategies to avoid, what do you need to really like double down on? Like what's the super priority and any other sort of challenges that you have, you can bring them. And yeah, like we said, we have like I think it's 90-minute sessions. We actually really will have a lot of time to actually give you that one-on-one answering your questions. So we'd really love for you to join us. Yeah, and we'll put a link in the chat for you as well. And yeah, I think that's kind of it. I just wanted to thank everybody for showing up. If you did watch these series, and I hope that they were helpful to you, we really wanted to just talk about getting launched because it's already mid-November, which means the end of the year is near, and I'm sure that many of us will want to launch in 2025. And so in that first sort of first quarter, those first 3 months, and so now is we really wanted to start getting those questions answered so that you can launch in 2025 and be successful. So hope it was that for you.
Awesome. Go check out the link, you guys. Come register. Come join us in the Ask Me Anything. Bring your launch questions. We want to help you get them answered.
All right, we will see you